you have this beautiful, like, I wouldn't say control, but like use of language. Like, I'm curious, where did that come from? Where you, I guess, landed on the importance of words? Where you're like, oh, words actually have a lot of weight and meaning and impact. Like, where did that come from? Did you always have an interest in it, or was there a moment where you were like, oh, this is worth investing in, understanding what these mean and what it means to other people?
It's a really good question, man. I appreciate that very much. I appreciate the compliment, but I appreciate the question even more because I get to do five or six, or I choose to do, I guess, but I also get the opportunity to do five to six, podcast appearances a week, and I don't think I've ever been asked that question. So I appreciate that greatly. Words matter. They matter a lot. And I wouldn't say it was one thing or one solid decision. I'll say it was a culmination of many things. One, my obsessive nature about everything. So, and then for better or for worse, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to optimize it to the best of my ability, and that is the way I'm wired. The best thing I can, it freaks people out a little bit when I tell them, and some people don't, but it is what it is. The best thing I can tell you is in 1999, I remember sitting in a movie theater, and I watched this movie that everybody knows now, and it's called The Matrix. And sort of watching The Matrix, there's this point at the end of the movie
In
where
the
Neo
theater?
really, in the theater, yeah.
Well, that must have been a
Uh,
trip.
it was a trip. It was absolutely a trip. So watching that there, and I remember at the very end, Neo all of a sudden sees the agents as like the code, right? And he just kind of sees them as this green coded, and everything's just kind of flowing. And he's like, "Oh, okay." I remember seeing that and going, "Oh my gosh, somebody put on a screen kind of how I see things in my head." That sounds a little creepy and it sounds a little weird, but that's always how my mind has worked. I've always and forever looked for patterns, looked for ways to connect things that seemingly shouldn't connect, tried to figure out how to optimize the situations, not just for myself, but for anybody else around me. And we can get, psychologically as deep as we want to get on whatever complex I probably have, and that's fine. But the reality is, I'm always looking for those patterns, and in my head, everything is always just kind of doing that, like kind of down in this screen in my mind. So recognizing patterns has always been a big thing for me, and so inherent in that is I'm always very attentive to the words that I use. I'm very attentive to the words others use, and how much do I believe them? How much do the words they say map out to the actions that I see them exhibit? That's always been something that's been fascinating to me. So I've always studied language from that point, right? Not the phonetics, not the my kids do Mad Libs and they're like, "Dad, I need an adjective." I'm like, "I don't even know what that is." I remind me what that is. I promise you, I don't know. I'm a very good communicator. I'm a very good writer. I don't know the parts of speech. Um, but I'm always just very curious, going, okay, they say this and they do this. What do they mean when they're saying this? Are they saying something they really mean, or are they saying something? I've come to this conclusion that people often will say the things they wish they believed. And then what they do is what they actually believe. And so I'm always curious on how close those are. And right, so I've always done that. And so then it was, as I really started getting into leading other people and being cognizant of, okay, what are my words? What are the words I can use, and how do I use those so that people aren't just inspired, but it actually gets them to take action. I want them to move. So really, as I started stepping on stages more and more and more and started speaking to all these people, I'm going, okay, what are the differences? So I would analyze every talk and go, did I get people to take action? Did I get them to move? What did I change about what I said or how I said it, right? That's when I really started to just pay more attention to the words that I use and be more careful about it, because words do create your reality, not just outwardly, but inwardly. The words that you tell yourself, right? The stories that you tell yourself, the stories that you tell yourself about the stories you tell yourself. That's what critical thinking actually is. Most people don't do that. They don't analyze the stories they're telling themselves. I don't believe most people think, never mind critically think, because they're not thinking about their thinking.